So recently I came across a video on YouTube about how Indomie is taking Nigeria by storm. And two things that I can extrapolate from this video is that, one, I've learned that there's for real, a worldwide instant noodles association. Two, is that Indomie is actually pretty big in Africa and everywhere else in the world. Like, I know that Indomie is sold overseas, but I didn't know that Indomie is literally what comes to people's minds when people hear the word Indonesia. And that brings me to the question today. What are we known for besides Indomie? What else can we export overseas? What else can we give and do more? How can we increase our soft power in the global stage? My friends, I've always believed that our nation of Indonesia is one of the countries in the world destined to dictate the trajectory of history. And in order to do that, we must strive to create a hegemony. A hegemony is a form of dominance or leadership exerted by one entity over the other. It can exist in various contexts such as politics, economics, culture, or military power. The dominant entity, whether a country, ideology, or group, exerts influence over others, often without direct force but through soft power, economic pressure, or ideological control. America, for instance, has dominated the later half of the 20th century, alongside the 21st century owing to their hegemony over culture, economy, and ideology. Countries like Japan, Korea, Italy, Germany are all highly affected by Americanism. But let's focus on the soft power aspect of this. What is soft power actually? Soft power is the ability to influence others through attraction, persuasion, and cultural appeal rather than coercion or economic pressure. The term was coined by political scientist Joseph Nye in the late 20th century to describe how nations gain influence by shaping global values, norms, and public perception. The presence of Indomie around the world has helped build that perception of Indonesia, spreading our influence, bringing foreign exchange, and most definitely, profit. And Indomie is such a universal commodity in terms of its function. To quote a Scottish chef that lived in Bali once said about Indomie, "The reason that Indomie is a cult food in Indonesia is that for tens of millions of minimum wage workers in the country, it's the only kind of food that can fill them up for very little money." And if you apply this to an international framework, this could mean billions of people could be fed through Indomie. Man, we would be offsetting McDonald's in feeding the world population. And if Indomie, just a packet of food sitting on a shelf, is able to become a sensation, think about what happens if we are able to fill an entire aisle at a Costco or Walmart in some random city in California. This is the game that Indonesia needs to play in order to export its value and increase its revenue. The question is, what else can Indonesia leverage in order to flood an entire market with its goods? Let's talk about the potential of our exports. Indonesian music industry is the biggest in Southeast Asia. In 2023, Indonesia's music industry was projected to contribute approximately 466.75 million USD, which is 7 trillion rupiahs, to the national gross domestic product. Streaming services have been a major driver of this growth. In 2022, streaming accounted for 90.6% of music revenue in Indonesia, generating 75.4 million USD, a 36.7% increase from the previous year. Thailand comes close to second in terms of music to Indonesia. In 2022, it was the world's 24th largest market for recorded music, with revenues reaching 105.4 million USD. This means that Indonesians leverage a huge contribution from the music industry from both imports and exports, which is helped by the fact that there are many linguistic and cultural similarities between Malaysia, Singapore, Brunei, with Indonesia, making music able to penetrate those markets in the first place. And our soft power has begun to be noticeable. Indonesian music is wildly popular in Malaysia, especially 2000s era artists and bands like Noah, Dewa 19, Ungu, Rosa, Judika, and Melly Guslo. Malaysian radio even play current Indonesian music frequently on their radios. I went to Malaysia earlier in 2024, and I was surprised to hear Bunga Citra Lestari songs frequently playing in the car radio. And it is becoming a significant issue for many Malaysian talents and politicians. Many Malaysians argue that Indonesian music should have quotas since 2008. It's important to note that these discussions reflect the perspectives of certain industry figures and organizations within Malaysian society. It's unclear to what extent these proposals have been enacted into official policy or regulation, but it's yet to be seen. Of course, Food and music is one of the things that could be exported to create a perception and bring more revenue for Indonesia. But let's take a look at other countries' strategy for soft power projection. Japan has managed to create a global branding through sushi, anime, J-pop, automotive industry, and electronic hardwares. Korea has managed to export K-pop, its movies, and its supermarkets internationally. China is able to even use their economy to export their culture. And let's not get into the topic of America, that's an entire video of its own which I'm too lazy to make. Lesson for Indonesia is, what can we learn from these countries? How can we better market our culture, brands, and influence? South Korea. The South Korean government actively supported its entertainment industry, investing in K-pop, K-dramas, and movies. The Korean wave has made South Korea a cultural powerhouse. So what can Indonesia learn from South Korea? They can strengthen government-backed cultural exports such as Indonesian music, films, and fashion, support Indonesian artists globally through subsidies, sponsorships, and partnerships, and promote Indonesian pop culture through online platforms such as TikTok, YouTube, and Spotify. The government in South Korea actively plays a role in investing or creating an environment where businesses like CJ Group and Lotte could invest in movies to export Korean culture. Most Korean movies contain plenty of Korean goods that are consumed, so it acts as a suggestion for viewers to seek out Korean goods. And this extends to K-pop as well, since idols indirectly act as ambassadors for Korean beauty brands by reinforcing beauty standards, helping beauty brands infiltrate a market. And then let's take a look at Japan. Japan thrives on its strong cultural branding. Anime, manga, video games, and technology, it builds franchises that last for generations. So what can Indonesia do from Japan? Develop strong intellectual property from Indonesian folklore, history, and traditions to create globally recognizable brands. Encourage investment in creative industries, from animation to gaming, with distinctly Indonesian storytelling. Use nostalgia marketing to build long-term brand loyalty. Unlike in Korea, where the government plays a direct role, Japan's economy allows businesses to flourish with minimal obstruction, outputting heavy amounts of IPs that the Japanese derive the revenue from. Anime is a strong cultural export for Japan, so strong that it basically affected the fundamentals of modern animation. Korean manhwas are influenced by Japanese visual aesthetics, and Chinese games like Genshin and Stranova are outright anime. Speaking of games, Japan's investment into electronics, both software and hardware, has pushed them to become the second biggest exporter of video games until it was overtaken by China. And speaking of China, China pushes its culture alongside its economy, ensuring that products like Huawei, TikTok, Alibaba are able to dominate global markets. At the same time, it restricts foreign influence domestically to protect its own culture. So what can Indonesia learn from China? Strengthen Indonesian global brands like Indomie, teh botol, or batik while supporting their international expansion. Develop a self-sustaining entertainment ecosystem to reduce reliance on foreign content while exporting Indonesian films, music, and literature. Push language diplomacy, making Bahasa Indonesia a recognized global language, similar to how China promotes Mandarin. This is kind of ironic because most of my content is in English. China tries to differentiate itself from its other East Asian counterparts. It protects its own markets of cultural exports from overseas, with the compromise being the adaptation of foreign goods as Chinese brands to prevent monopoly, and seeks to create its own ecosystem. What China also does best is to take the best aspects of other culture and use it for their own exports. China is pragmatic in that way. For example, China has begun quote-unquote hijacking anime to export its own manhwas, games, and animation. Once again, we've learned exactly what East Asia is doing with their exports, so what does it mean for Indonesia? Soft power projection opens up opportunities and gateways for Indonesia to become a hegemony. And becoming a hegemony is what Indonesia should aspire to be, for global politics is about survival, not co-optation. Soft power is an economic tool. The dominance of Indomie in Africa, Asia, and the Middle East It demonstrates how a national brand can serve as a symbol of influence. Just as Japan's anime and China's TikTok create global economic leverage, Indonesia can expand its soft power through music, cinema, fashion, and cuisine. Imagine if Tahi Lalats became an animation that kids in Vietnam would watch. Imagine if Joko Anwar's Come and See Pictures produces hits in Japan. Imagine if Minang and Sunda Foods were a staple in Taiwan. The government should actively support these industries, ensuring that Indonesian culture remains a powerful export. Additionally, language is a major soft power tool. With Bahasa Indonesia being the most widely spoken language in ASEAN, Indonesia has the potential to reshape regional discourse and information flows. Promoting its language as the lingua franca of Southeast Asia would strengthen its role as the primary cultural and economic hub of the region, and would also push me to stop speaking English in my contents. Indonesia, as the de facto leader of ASEAN, could use soft power to shape the regional political landscape. By promoting somewhat democratic values, religious tolerance, and economic cooperation, Indonesia can position itself as the moral and diplomatic authority in Southeast Asia. Countries that align with Indonesia's culture and ideological appeal are more likely to support its leadership in regional decision-making. For example, Indonesia's diplomatic efforts in maintaining peace in South China Sea and its role in mediating conflicts between ASEAN members show that leadership through influence is more sustainable than leadership through coercion. Indonesia must also recognize that regional hegemony is a competitive process. China and the Western countries have already made significant soft power inroads in Southeast Asia through investment, media, and technology. If Indonesia does not take an active role in projecting its culture and influence, it risks being overshadowed by these foreign powers, in its own backyard even. For Indonesia to fulfill its potential as a regional hegemon, it must invest in soft power as a long-term strategy. Military strength and economic dominance are sure important, but cultural influence and diplomatic leadership are what will solidify Indonesia's role as the undisputed leader of Southeast Asia. Through a well-executed soft power approach, Indonesia can not only secure its position in ASEAN, but also extend its influence globally, shaping the trajectory of history in the 21st century. This desire for greatness is something that many Indonesians are lacking, but it is something that we need to foster now to prevent ourselves from falling into insignificance and secure our place under the sun. Tell me what you guys think about this video. Feel free to leave messages in the comment section. Don't forget to join my Discord server. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you like more content like this. And I'll see you in the next episode of the Based Indonesian Show.
Subscribe to the Based Indonesian Show. Dijamin halal.